welcome to the Camnet Breakfast. I'm Patrick Soko with my co-host, Shalon.
Indeed, the usual co-host yesterday, I was a guest on this show and felt a little awkward, but we are here as your co-host. Today is the Thursday edition of the Breakfast Show. We are focusing on policy and politics as usual, but we're not going to delve so much into that. For starters, let's just go straight into the morning boost. When we return, we'll be zooming into the stories as well as going into other segments on the show. Good morning.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Boost. I'm sure you've been following our programs and not just watching but also trying to exercise. So welcome, and today we're going to be working on the abs. All right, let's go. Warm up. Let's go. Same jumping jacks. Instead of going all the way up, this time here we go. That's your warm-up today. Go. All right. So that's a 1 minute warm up. Let's do some abs workout now. Okay. As you can see, I came with a bottle of water. We're going to do some Russian twists. There you go. Get a bottle, put it down there. If you have a dumbbell, good for you. I'm going to sit here, working on the abs. Lean back a bit. There you go. 1. 7. 10. Okay. Go to the second one. We're going to come back to this one. Here we go. You lie down. That was 10. I'm going to do another 10. Let's go. That's 10. Bring back the bottle. Let's go 10. Eight and 9. 10. Go down. Let's go 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's the set, which is 40. If you want after that, you can take a break. Let's do another one now. Still on the abs. Okay. I'm going to be now sliding on the side. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. 15-second break. Then you go back to the workout again. Another 10. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. How many? 8, 9, 10 for those that are watching on Facebook. So that's 20. Here we go now. Elbow to knee crunches. And then we start doing it. Okay. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Change. Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. So you've done your abs workout for today. And we do that again. And it's going to work out fantastic for you. Let's cool down. I only have seconds to my 5 minutes now. And very soon I'll be signing out. So that's how you do your abs workout. We did 3, if you noticed. So let's go march and start cooling down. March, march, march. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I've enjoyed my session with you. Looking forward to training with you again. Let's go.
Welcome back. You are watching the Camnet Breakfast Thursday edition, Governance and Policy, with me, Patrick Soko, and Sharon Kalimbula. And we just ran you through our first segment, which is Morning Boost, where we continue to remind you to keep fit. Just now, it is the right time, Sharon, for us to go to our next segment.
Exactly.
Yeah, where the doctors have been helping us to digest a number of health matters pertaining to various ailments. And this week, we also have Dr. Cherwa Mwanza, who is going to help us unpack the issue of hypertension so that we get to understand.
Yeah, the good part about this and the unique part is that in children.
Yeah. Yeah, how do you manage it?
Exactly.
And how can you diagnose it? What are the signs? I think the doctors will help us to understand that in our health segment.
Let's just go straight into that.
Good morning, our lovely viewers. Welcome once again to the health segment brought to you proudly by the Women Medical Association of Zambia. I'm Dr. Chelo Mwanza, your baby doctor. So today we continue looking at congenital heart disease. So as we've been talking about this condition from the beginning of the week, so these are conditions that children are born with, conditions that affect their heart. So today we'll talk about something a little bit unusual, something that we don't really expect in children, but it's there. So today we'll be talking about hypertension. So hypertension can actually be caused by a congenital defect in the heart. So usually this is because the blood vessels that pump blood to the rest of the body, I should mention that the biggest vessel that takes blood to the rest of the body actually has a component where it hasn't developed as it's supposed to, so it's smaller than usual. Now, because of that, the heart seems to look at it as an obstruction to blood flow, so the heart tends to pump harder than it is supposed to, and hence this child gets to present with hypertension. How can we know that your child has hypertension? It's not something that you can tell by looking. It's not something that a child will complain about. It's something that actually gets to be seen because this child has had their blood pressure measured. Now, I should mention that, of course, in the adult, we have numbers where you say, okay, if the BP is more than 120/80, maybe that person hypertension. It is not the same with children. Children are not big adults. They're children, and hence the way their body functions is very different from the way the adult body does. Yeah, so hypertension in a child varies depending on their age, depending whether they are male or female, and also depending on their height. So we might not say because my neighbor's child had this recording when they went for their checkup on their BP and it was normal, and it's the same with another person's child. So these children are different, and even their blood pressure readings might be different. So we don't really need to compare one child to another. Each one of them needs their own blood pressure checked. Strange, right? Yes. Children can also present with hypertension. So today we'll be talking about hypertension caused because of a heart defect or a a problem in the blood vessels that these children have. Of course, there could be many other causes, problems with their hormones, problems with their kidneys, problems with many other parts of the body. But today we are focusing, and in this week particular, since it is our Congenital Heart Disease Awareness Week, we're going to talk about hypertension caused because of a problem in the heart or even in the blood vessels. Yeah, so I've talked about how this blood pressure comes about, and I've talked about where the problem might be, and right now I'm going to move on to talk about treatment. Of course, the drugs we use initially to control the high BP in this child, which we call hypertension, of course, are similar to the adults, but then again, it is not the same amount of drugs because this is a child, they have a different weight from the adults, so we are going to give them their drugs depending on their weight, their height, and all those things. So they might be similar, but the dosages are different because of the different things. Some of the complications we do get in children that have hypertension, and that's why we want our children screened so that they don't get the complications are things like, you know, their kidneys stop functioning well, they might get a stroke, and you know, even their fingers and their toes may not get adequate blood as they are supposed to. I know it's something very unusual, but children can have hypertension that's caused by the problem in the way their heart formed as they were being formed in the womb. Yeah, so just a recap again, we are emphasizing screening and screening and screening. Let's not shun the hospital. If you feel your child has something unusual, seek medical help, see a doctor, see a nurse at your nearest health center. They will help you. So please, if you think your child has a heart condition, once again, we want you to see a health care worker. Okay, so having talked about the fact that, you know, children can also have hypertension, what can we do about it? Should we just let our children walk around with very high blood pressures? No, there's always treatment once a diagnosis is made. So treatment of hypertension in children, actually, to start with, we could start with medication. So we'll prescribe medication for these children depending on how high their BP is and if they have any other illnesses that are accompanying these BPs. So the drugs could be similar with those that we give in the adult, but these are dependent on a child's height, weight, and age. So please, parents, not because, you know, you're taking the same drugs as your child for the hypertension, you want to share the drugs. We'll be very unhappy to see that because the dosages are very, very different and they are child dependent. And so even when this child is on this medication, it doesn't mean you stay away. We would urge you to see your doctor regularly as per reviews, because, you know, these are children that are growing. They may not have the same weight they had, let's say, when you went for your last review. Maybe they might have gained weight, and since the medication we give them depends on their weight, so we may need to adjust their drugs so that their BP is under control. So please stick to your reviews and make sure your child is seen when they are supposed to. So the definitive treatment of this hypertension that is caused because the big blood vessel has, has a narrowing in its course. So the other thing we need to do is actually operate on this child, because we may give them the medication, of course, to control their BP, but we have not sorted out the thing that's causing the problem. And so they may need an operation. So we are happy to mention that at the National Heart Hospital, which is along Airport Road, we're able to do some of these operations. We're able to correct it. And, you know, it will be good, you know, your child being on medication for some time because of their high BP, and then we do this operation and they're fine, they're good to go and not needing their medication anymore. So we are happy that at the National Heart Hospital, we are able to do some of these operations to help correct some of these defects that children can be born with. I would like to talk about complications at this point. What happens if your child doesn't get the treatment? What happens if you don't get your child screened for this high BP? So to start with, the heart itself is going to fail because it's pumping against some form of blockage, some form of, narrowing. Maybe I could bring it down even to talk about a hose pipe. I know some of us may have used the hose pipe to water our gardens, our flowers and everything. And you've seen how, the more you reduce the point where water comes out, the more pressure actually you do see the pressure of the water that comes up. And that's what happens in the blood vessels as well. So because of that narrowing, the heart seems to be pumping against a very heavy load, and because of that, the heart might fail in the process, so your heart will stop pumping very well. That would be the first problem or complication that you're going to get. Secondly, it will be your kidneys that will be affected. We all need our kidneys to be functioning very well. It helps us to remove some of the dirt from the body even as we pass our urine. So you don't want your kidneys not working. So your kidneys will be damaged if your child's hypertension is not controlled. The other complications that you're going to get is the effects on the brain. So because of this high blood pressure, the pressure in the brain will also increase. And because of that, the child might get a stroke. The child might get a bleed in the brain, which is an emergency. And we don't want to get there. We want the hypertension controlled as soon as possible. So I'm going to say this again, very important. Your child may not present with any signs of hypertension. The only way you're going to know that your child has this problem is if you go to the hospital, let your child get screened, let your child's BP be measured, and that will be the only way you are going to know. So thank you for watching us today. Just a recap and a reminder. Dental hygiene we are emphasizing because so many problems are brought about because of poor oral care, not brushing teeth adequately. So this will make your heart sicker. So thank you so much, and this health segment is proudly brought to you by the Medical Women Association of Zambia. See you in the next segment.
Well, there you have it. Interesting information there coming from Dr. Chelo Mwanza. We called her Chelo earlier, but just to correct the name, she is indeed Dr. Chelo Mwanza, and she's coming from the National Heart...
the Zambia Medical Women Association.
And that department which deals with heart diseases. And she was talking about heart conditions in, is it hypertension rather?
In children.
In children. A very, very interesting piece that... many of us would want to look at, review, and just listen to it once again, just to understand that these things also happen in children. Patrick, I didn't think that a child really would have hypertension, which I think this is what people call BP, not so? Why talk about BP?
Yeah, it does. That's a condition, and these medical conditions are not segregative, just like COVID.
No, but this is a thing that we need to demystify, because usually we say BP, because at some point, BP was known as a disease for rich people.
And those
That's what
who
people
are
would
fat.
say, and those that are fat. But we've got people that are slim.
So, because for me, like you are saying, right? When I was understanding that myth, when I saw someone who's slim and they're talking about people,
BP.
they're getting this BP. You get a sense.
So, but then what more in children? It actually even becomes more complicated when you hear of a child having BP or something like that, But then these are things that the doctors from the Zambia Medical Women Association have been bringing to our table, just trying to clarify and give us more information with regards to various diseases. And today, like we mentioned, Dr. Chelo Mwanza was talking about hypertension in children. You may want to look at this. Our next segment, Patrick, is money markets,
money market.
And we'll go straight into that. The money markets as of today, the Great British Pound is buying at 23 kwacha 81 ngwe and selling at 24 kwacha 26 ngwe. The United States dollars is buying at 17 kwacha 50 and selling at 17 kwacha 83 ngwe. The euro is buying at 18 kwacha 89 ngwe and selling at 19 kwacha 26 ngwe. The South African rand is buying at 1 kwacha 16 ngwe and selling at 1 kwacha 19 ngwe. So those are your money markets as of 24th February 2022.
Interesting, the kwacha still trading within the same range for a while now, 17. But we were at the time when it was at 16. And we continue to see a fluctuation.
Within this range,
stable within this range,
yeah, for quite some time. And only time, Patrick, when I read these money markets, the exchange rates, I always say that moment dollar. You know,
but there's a way, Sharon, you can be having that dollar. You know what you can do? Start converting that kwacha into $1. Who knows? It may go back to 20.
To 20, and then I just do the exchange, and then I have more money in my pocket.
Yes.
Anyways, you are watching the Camnet Breakfast, and later on the show we will be joined by the Zambia Law Development Commission with the most contentious issue at the moment, the law reforms and the penal code. To be specific, they have proposed a number of amendments that they want to effect if at all Parliament ratifies. Among those things that people have been talking about throughout, at least for the past 2 weeks, are that the country rather should do away with defamation of the president, as well as the polygamy issue, among other things. But like I mentioned, 2 of those things have been very, very prominent. So we will be joined by Zambia Law Development Commission to talk about these amendments or these changes in this legal related activity.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm calling it an activity.
Yeah, there are a number of issues that need to be clarified because there are changes. Apparently, the laws, Sharon, pertaining governing us under the penal code, some of the provisions are archaic, and in the sense that they still represent the Zambia in the colonial times.
Exactly.
So basically, these changes are trying to clean up some of these laws, because you'll be amazed that you even find names of the Queen
in the penal code.
in our penal code. And those things, what are they still doing in our statutes? And those are things we need to clear as a country so that we continue to improve our laws. But as we do, we are also cognizant that law reforms usually are a cross-cutting matter, or a matter that involves everyone, because these are laws that govern the country and every stakeholder has to be involved. Talking about that, Sharon, we see that there are some clauses that are making some people uncomfortable. Some of them, for instance, are pertaining to the issue of bigamy, as explained.
Exactly.
But there was also clarity provided by the Ministry of Justice. And there's also an aspect of that it is also promoting suggestion that they're also advocating for the removal of the death penalty from the statutes. But stakeholders have argued to say constitutional reforms previously, including the Mvunga, the Manakatwe, and the Mongomba constitutional reviews, have also always recommended that the death penalty be maintained. So now, but this reform is suggesting otherwise. So those are issues that the country seeks to amend, and we are going to say, others are saying that these amendments will decriminalize the aspect of abortion. But I don't understand, because to some extent the issue of abortion is legal to a certain extent, because depending on the circumstances that are there, when it's an issue of life, especially and death, probably if it's going to give you complications, there are procedures you can follow. But talking about the same issue of abortion, just because there's some criminal elements attached to it, it doesn't mean people have not stopped doing that. We saw that story in Eastern Province, where we had quite a huge
number of abortions, and Eastern Province always makes headlines for related.
Maybe why Eastern Province? I would think that the people in Eastern Province, I should suggest, they are working. If you ask me, Sharon, they are working because they are managing to put the statistics together. Because it is the same probably in most parts of the country. The Copper Belt, for instance, incidents that are happening in the Eastern Province could be replicated in the Copper Belt. But you find that how timely are these officials releasing these statistics? But the Eastern Province guys are usually up to date. Even child marriages, you'd find that they will just say, okay, blah, a number of girls
with child pregnancies.
Yes, all those issues.
All right, you are watching the Camnet Breakfast. You too can have your say on the show by calling us live in studio, as well as send those messages via our, what do you call them? Social media platforms.
Yes,
I wanted to call them networks. Yes, but I was looking for a word and my mind just went off on me. But anyway, it's back. So yes, you can use those social media platforms to send us those messages that you feel you want to communicate to the authority. And when our guest comes in studio, you will be allowed to call them and ask them those pertinent questions. This is a matter that concerns all of us, and you don't need to wait for people to speak for you. Call in and speak your mind. A number of issues, Patrick, have come out on these, and we've spoken to a number of stakeholders. Gears is of the view that indeed some of the laws in this penal code need to be addressed, need to be repealed, and others actually are against this. So it's a two-way thing, but obviously you just need to reach a consensus. You cannot fully agree when it comes to laws. Like we always say, no constitution or maybe no law is actually appealing to almost everybody. You just need to reach a certain agreement to say, okay, we can do with this. At least it will probably favor the majority or so. So for now, though, let's just zoom into one of the stories that we carried yesterday as we continue with this breakfast show.
So the story we're going to zoom in, Sharon, at this moment is the one on the suspension of mining licenses by the Minister of Finance. This is because they suspect the Minister of Mines, rather, because these two stories came here, they're almost similar, and we're going to also zoom in the other one where the Minister of Finance also made a surprising recommendation on the money that was gotten from the proceeds of crimes, where it is being channeled to the health, to the education sector to facilitate for bursaries. That's an interesting story.
Thanks to Faith, I saw some memes, some write-ups on social media like, "Thank you, Faith, for sponsoring students."
Interesting stuff there. Stuff there. So we zoom into the mining story, where the mining, the Minister of Mines and Mineral Development has suspended the issuance of mining licenses for 1 month. This is in order to clean up the sector, as well as get rid of corruption and that perception that has been there, according to the Minister of Mines, rather, Mr. Paul Kabuswe. Zambia possesses one of the world's highest grade of deposits of copper and is Africa's second largest copper producer, only behind the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. Zambia produces about 20% of the world's emeralds. The positive attributes are endless in the mining sector. Licensing is one of the key elements in the mining sector. However, it has been marred with irregularities, with incidences such as people using politics to claim ownership of some mines, corruption, and the awarding of licenses to investors without the blessing of the local community, like was the case in Mumbwa district in Chief Shakumbila's chiefdom.
Saying Ozone is the best investor, and we want Ozone, nothing else. Nobody. That is too vast. Too vast. We leave it to the Minister of Mines to decide. If they want to divide the area, they can divide, but Ozone should be there.
Minister of Mines and Mineral Development Paul Kabuswe, Wednesday 23rd February 2022, suspended the issuance of mining licenses for 1 month in a bid to clean up the sector in the wake of the high corruption perception and related allegations.
Use a very bad word, the system was rotting. But we have decided together with our team under the New Dawn government that we need to clean the system and do proper issuance of mining licenses, remove the greed that has, the greed that has rocked, the mining, issuance of mining licenses, starting from artisanal miners to small-scale miners to medium-scale and large-scale miners. So we want to make sure that our system is clean and corruption is gotten rid of. So because of what I have said,
Mr. Kabuswe says dormant licenses will be repossessed, adding that the minister also highlighted that lawlessness will not be condoned in the sector regardless of one's political affiliation.
Presiding over appeals, no, I was late to renew my license. People need to be serious. I also want to sound a warning to those that have gotten licenses for speculative purposes, that we are going to get you. That as a ministry, we want licenses that are active. If you get a mining license, be it an exploration license or whatever license that you get from us, we don't want you to just keep it and look at it and probably use it to raise money at the stock exchange or wherever. We want people to be active. So we want seriousness in this ministry. We are not going to tolerate anyone, regardless of where you are coming from, whatever political affiliation.
Patrick Soko, Camnet News in Lusaka. The interesting story, Sharon, where the Minister of Mines, Pokabuswe, is highlighting that component that they are going to suspend, they have suspended rather, the issuance of mining licenses for a period of 1 month.
Mining licenses for small scale
at all grades.
All grades.
Yeah, small scale, artisanal, medium, as well as large scale. For now, they say they want to clean up the sector. He was saying that there has been a lot of allegations surrounding corruption at the department that issues mining licenses, and that some people have been using undue influence or political connections to have these licenses. And you also warned that if Sharon Kalimbula, you are having a license and you are not using it, that license will be revoked because they don't want dormant licenses. If you also delay to go and renew your license, your mining license there, they won't give you a platform because you should know that my license is expiring and I need to renew it. So those are issues that were coming out of the press briefing that was held yesterday on the 23rd of February 2022. And this suspension will last up to March 2023 this year. A month.
But anyways, the mining sector has always been mad with such illegalities, among them also the other ministry, Ministry of Land. So basically, mining and land-related issues have a lot of illegalities. I remember also the Minister of Lands, Mr. Elijah Mchima, also did a mini suspension to just clean up the whole system. I'm just wondering why it has taken this long for Mr. Kabuse to actually effect this suspension to clean up the situation, because it was a well-known fact. I mean, these are things that people were talking about even before the change of administration, to say, no, there's corruption in this, there's corruption in this. So I don't know why it had to take them 6-7 months for him to actually realize this. But however, it's never too late to do the right thing, and we hope that this time around, when the system is cleaned and the officers are maybe transferred to other departments, new things will be done. Because really, you don't expect things to change if at all you have the same people who were deemed to be doing certain things, and then you just suspend for a month, and then you open, and then you have the same people again. They'll still find ways and means of looking for the loopholes, because they are the ones probably that are building the system.
Exactly.
You know? So what's important also is to ensure that officers in line departments that are deemed corrupt are moved to other departments and just bring in new people.
Your concern, I think, I was equally highlighted during the press briefing, because others suggested to say, how can the same ministry opt to clean itself?
Clean itself.
When some people will be part of the cleaning process, maybe they also need to be cleaned up themselves.
To be cleaned up. That's
so
the ones
exactly. So they said. Then the minister said that they may even seek external auditors to just make sure that the process is thoroughly undertaken. And we just hope that they'll go that route. Like you are saying, Sharon, there are people who knows to say, if I press there, things will go in a certain direction. So we have to always be proactive and ensure that there is that transparency and accountability. At the end of the day, if there's no transparency, it may be difficult, even a certain to the extent
themselves in the foot.
Exactly, because we also have to. We also ask the question to say we need to appreciate the levels of corruption. What are those levels of corruption? What are the officers involved?
How much are we recording with regards to corruption?
So then they
in
said
this sector?
That's why we are cleaning up the sector. So we only get to understand the extent of the problem once the process is done.
No, but for them to reach this level, obviously they might have done preliminary investigations, and they said, okay, the rot is not as small as we thought. It's big, but maybe. For me, I love to work with numbers when it comes to such.
Exactly.
They would have at least given us a percentage of corruption. So, okay, we are maybe this percentage.
Even a name and shame kind of arrangement.
Exactly, you know.
I don't know about the Ministry of Mines, but I'm aware that in various government departments, we have integrity committees that are there to help fight corruption and report suspicious corrupt activities. So if
are these integrity committees even effective?
Yeah, those are questions we need to continue
because
asking
they keep being formed like all the time. There's meetings for decentralization meetings. I think we had a number of them during the previous administration, where all the permanent secretaries for line ministries, provincial PSs would be in Lusaka camping at Mulungushi, talking about the whole thing of decentralizing, where the issues of forming integrity committees, how effective are they. I'm just not sure if they've been as effective as planned, because if at all they've been, I don't think would be suspending certain things in these ministries in order for them to do investigations, because the duty rather of an integrity committee is to stop suspicious activities of related corruption before they even grow.
Yeah, exactly.
But then if you allow them to grow, I mean, if you stop certain activities from happening, like suspending the issuance of licenses in order for you to investigate, meaning the rot is big.
And
where are they?
I think I also have to understand the formation of these same integrity committees, because some organizations, Sharon, are too small to the extent that the person who may be involved in corruption may be the part of the integrity committee, and may not want to divulge anything.
Exactly. You know?
So I think
these integrity committees are supposed to be independent from the whole. That's what I think. For them to be effective, you know, not whereby ministry is part of the integrity committee. I mean, and they own a cashier at Black Mountain. You know?
Yes.
They are suppliers. These big mines. They did. You know, they are connected.
They are connected, yes.
And then they are part of
I think to make progress, I would even suggest a situation where, let's say, ministries that are similar. Okay, we may take the Ministry of Mines and Ministry of Land because there's a minor
direct correlation.
Because we only mine from the land. So if someone from the Ministry of Mines is appointed the chairperson of the committee in the Ministry of Mines, then at least so that the people on that committee at the Ministry of Mines can brief that chairman to say, Chair, I think that would make sense.
Yeah, because you may notice the corruption from your superior who is part of the integrity committee. How do you report?
All those issues.
All those issues come into play, because really for me, if an institution has an integrity committee, there is no point of waiting to reach a level where you suspend certain activities for you to do investigations, meaning it's not working.
Exactly.
They need to go back to the drawing board. You are watching Camnet Breakfast. My name is Sharon Kalimbula with my co-host Patrick Soko, and we are zooming into some of the stories that made headlines yesterday, the 23rd of February 2022. You two out there can have your say on some of these stories, among other things that are happening in your community that you may want Camnet TV to zoom into. Like I mentioned earlier, later on we'll be joined by the Zambia Law Development Commission, as we'll be discussing quite a number of contentious issues that have been happening or being talked about at least in the last 2 weeks up until now, until actually Parliament ratifies some of these things that we are talking about. So you too can have your say on these laws. For women out there, I'm posing this question to you. Do you want your man to marry 3 women? Or you women, do you want to marry 3 men? At least from a layman's perspective, that's what this polygamy issue, that's what I mean. But it's not actually
but
that.
If you ask my question, if you ask me a question, Sharon, to say about the polygamy issue, I think that is out of context in modern times, because if you ask me, while we're advancing gender equality, you'd find that all things being equal, we're talking about 50-50.
Yes.
Then it means a woman also may be allowed to have to marry more than one person. So if you men are not okay with that, then stop the conversation.
Why should the woman be okay with that? If you're not okay, stop the conversation. That's what Patrick says. So yes, have you say on this very interesting topic that we are discussing. Patrick, I love that. If you're not okay with it, stop the conversation.
Exactly. But if you're okay with it,
let's go on. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Okay. So yes.
But I know men and their women.
And you know, there's a lot of justification that's been going on these social media platforms, especially Facebook, to say we've got a lot of men, it's the secret families out there, people who only know about them maybe when one of them there's a funeral or something, but then they should just legalize, because this is something that has been going on for a long time. But then at the same time, I want to understand that we could be having discussions beyond what the law is being proposed on. So when we have on set the Zambia Law Development Commission, we want to understand what are they really proposing with regards to polygamy, because people have gone on rampage.
You know, and I know, people are just ahead of the conversation.
They're ahead of the conversation.
Because at the end of the day, those are proposals.
Yes.
Parliament has not debated on that.
No. We're actually still very far, looking at the pace that we have.
Yes.
As you know, a country and parliamentarians, you know, for them to go this stage.
I think we would have cleaned up. But again, there's also that trust issue which people have with our members of parliament.
Yeah.
Whether to understand whether or not they represent their interests. So sometimes you fear to say, "Ish, if this thing goes into parliament, like in this context, it may just go like that if they are okay with it, without even taking into consideration what we think about it as citizens."
Yeah, others were actually saying polygamy is a conversation for rich people. So if you're not rich,
also
stop the conversation.
Interesting. And we're just going to zoom in the story from the Ministry of Finance, where they were receiving proceeds of crimes and they have redirected them to the Ministry of Education to deliver tertiary education to vulnerable children. Stay tuned.
It is exactly 5 months since police in Lusaka recovered over 65 million kwacha cash and over 57,000 United States dollars suspected to have been stolen or unlawfully obtained from a house in Lusaka's New Kasama area belonging to a media personality, Faith Musonda. Minister of Finance Tumbeko Msokotwane has today, Wednesday 23rd February 2022, announced that the funds that have been recovered from corruption will go towards the Ministry of Education, which will provide additional university bursaries to 2,232 university students across the nation who were left out on government bursaries in December 2021 due to budget constraints.
And after comprehensive analysis and wider consultation, your government has decided to use the funds that have been recovered from corruption, this particular case, to provide additional university bursaries in 2022. This will benefit an additional 2,232 university students across the nation who were left out on government bursaries in December 2021 due to budget constraints.
Meanwhile, the Anti-Corruption Commission Wednesday handed over the said resources to government and has assured that in due course, the Commission will also hand over other properties, including the 6.5 million kwacha house where the money was recovered from, to the state.
The Commission will in due course also hand over other properties, including the house where the money was recovered. The house is worth 6.5 million kwacha. Ladies and gentlemen, let me take this opportunity to sternly warn the perpetrators of corruption, especially public officials, that the Commission will not tolerate any criminal behavior.
And Education Minister Douglas Yakarima says it is sad to see children and parents whose children have been left out from bursaries flock to his office, seeking government intervention while the government has no resources.
So I'm so grateful, sir, because the burden has been huge for me. Kids coming to cry in front of my office, some mothers coming to wail in my office, some fathers coming, they are bedridden, but they are woken up to say, go and represent me. So I was a very hopeless character, that I can tell you. But I know I will still have challenges because we have managed to do half of this.
Abuse of public resources destroys the lives of many people, while proper investment of resources can create greater prosperity for current and future generations. Prudence Jota, reporting for Camnet TV News.
All right, so that is the story. Yesterday, it was covered, and the Minister of Finance, Mr. Stumbeko Msokotwane, was receiving the proceeds of crime from the Anti-Corruption Commission, and he channeled that huge chunk of money to the Ministry of Education to cater for the loans for the students. Obviously, I'm hoping that it will be channeled to the people that were left out on the loans scheme that government is offering in tertiary education, especially those from UNZA and the Mulungushi University. Now, you may be aware that the interesting part about this story is that most of the money rather was coming from Faith Musonda. Is it the 63?
Yeah.
Patrick?
Yeah.
The 63?
That
made us actually stand in the cold at night at the police station, Central Police. Yes, covering this story, just wanting to know exactly if indeed she had acquired that money genuinely or not. But the story didn't really reach the logical conclusion that we expected as the media and actually members of the public, because she decided to just forfeit the money, you know. And we got an explanation to say the Anti-Corruption Commission has many ways of recovering these money suspected to be proceeds of crime, one of which is probably to just give the money to the commission and evade going to all these courts and processes and probably jail and stuff. So yeah, she was clever enough. She handed over the money and the house in which the money was found. So basically that's how the Faith story ends. However, she's still appearing in court for some of the cases that mushroomed recently, and we will still follow and see if at all we can recover another 63 million to go towards probably the health sector this time around.
Yeah.
She's a funder, you know.
Yeah, she's a funder.
She's a funder.
She's a funder. But do you have, okay, in this case, are you thanking Faith or what should be the right?
I think so. I think I am thanking her, because really, it's better the money goes to people that are less privileged than her as an individual.
You know, for me,
the truth of the matter, Patrick, the truth of the matter here, and I don't think, really, this money was dubiously obtained, corruptly obtained, because there is no way you, Patrick Soko, you had any money, you just give it as grant for free. I refuse to believe that.
Yes, so now, you see how corruption deprives the poor.
Exactly.
So those the government was going to manage to finance these children.
If I told that money was in government coffers, if that money was in government coffers, they would have managed to sustain or to at least fund some of the students this year, but they had to wait. You see?
So when someone, as an individual, as Sharon Karimbula, takes something from the treasury,
God forbid,
then it means that she's depriving more people.
Exactly.
And that's what we are seeing in this story. I think we should understand that corruption or abuse of office or authority is not good for the country, because it deprives the poor. And you see, the money that was going to go to an individual, which you cannot spend on yourself entirely. Honestly, what kind of selfishness is that?
The levels of selfishness are something else. And yes, indeed, Patrick, it's a story that has many twists and turns. And when we talk about increasing the poverty gap, when you practice corruption, this is exactly what it means. Because I remember when the budget, the national budget for 2022 was presented, we had an interview live on set with Hemis Maunda, a development economist. He mentioned to say, if we get the money for faith, we would use it to employ teachers, you know, would use that money to employ a lot of teachers. You know, it's not money to play with.
No, it's not.
You know?
It's not.
It may suffice a certain sector of our national budget.
Yeah.
You know? So basically, for me, I'm personally happy that the money has gone towards the education sector. And we hope that when more money is recovered, it will go towards probably the health sector.
Interesting. So that we can recruit those doctors.
Exactly, those doctors that we're protesting. However, that is also another story, a story for another day. Patrick, you promised to do another story on that. Beyond the protest.
Yes.
And beyond the 7 years at UNZA or anywhere else. And could it be that we have a lot of institutions offering these medical courses other than the usual that we knew, which was the University of Zambia, that we have so many doctors, so many people protesting? These things were rare back in the days, but nowadays we look at this thing to be very normal, and we see a lot of people protesting.
There has been cause, for instance, as a country, that we undertake a human resource audit so that we can be able to understand what are sort of needs that we need in terms of training our young people, so that we train them for the courses that are readily available.
Yes.
For instance, how are we preparing for the electronic vehicle industry? How are we training our people? So when we are doing what we call career guidance, you know, most of the people usually are accustomed to say, a long time ago, Sharon, you are aware that the only thing you'd say when they tell you to say, what do you want to become when you grow up? You'd rather say, I would rather be a doctor and or a pilot. You understand?
Exactly.
But for instance, if you want to be a pilot, there are limitations, because at the end of the day, there are only, it's not a very huge industry that can accommodate millions of people or thousands of people.
Yes,
you understand? So you may be doing a course that may not actually bring out the best out of you as a person. You like you are saying now at the moment, we have so many people who are now graduates as teachers, but they are not yet employed. So yet it shows you that we have limitations in terms of
training people for the wrong courses.
Exactly.
Not
so
exactly the wrong courses, but we already have a huge backlog that we need to work on, and then we keep on having these graduates year in, year out, maybe even twice a year. So yeah, Patrick, let's just take a breather so that we allow our guests to be on set. To the viewers out there, like we promised earlier as we were opening the show, that we will have people from the Zambia Law Development Commission talking about various issues relating to the law amendments that have been proposed. So we take a short breather. When we return, we'll have them on set as we delve into that conversation. Good morning.
Camnet TV is becoming big and better. You can now watch Camnet TV wherever you are around the world, simply by downloading the Camnet TV app. With Camnet TV app, you only use less bundles. Camnet TV, not just another channel.
Welcome back. Well, you are watching the Camnet Breakfast Thursday edition, and we are discussing governance and policy matters. And today we are going to talk about law reforms, and these are law reforms. We have the Law Development Commission in the studios to help us discuss that issue, Sharon, because this has been a topical issue, which has been coming out, a number of issues that need to be clarified there, Sharon.
Indeed, Patrick, in studio we have Mr. Muiva Mwenda. Muiva Mwenda. It now sounds like Bemba, but I know these names are not really Bemba. Muiva Mwemba, who is a research coordinator at the Zambia Law Development Commission. And later on we'll be joined by another person from the same institution just to delve into the conversation. But for now, though, we start with Mr. Mwenda. Mr. Mwenda, just to kickstart this interview, I know probably you didn't actually expect this, but just give us a brief background of who you are as Zambia Law Development Commission, because you've been making noise in the past 2 weeks, and maybe people may not be so much aware of who you are as an institution.
Okay, thank you so much. The Zambia Law Development Commission is a statutory body, meaning it is an institution that has been created by an act of parliament. And the act of parliament that creates the Zambia Law Development Commission is the Zambia Law Development Commission Act, which is Chapter 32 of the Laws of Zambia. And the primary mandate of the commission is law review, meaning our mandate, or what the government expects from us, is to look through the laws that are existing in Zambia, to be able to identify the gaps, to be able to identify challenging provisions so that we make appropriate recommendations to government on what needs to be done in order to have good laws. And you may also know that in certain areas, we may have certain areas where we do not have the law in place, but we need the law to regulate the area. So if that is the case, the Zambia Law Development Commission is there also to develop the law in that area and make recommendations to the government to say, can you consider the following for enactment into law so that we can have a society which is governed by laws. We initially started as a department within the Ministry of Justice, but later on, government saw the need to create a semi-autonomous body or institution to sit on its own and be able to advise government on matters of law review and development independently. So that's who we are as Zambia Law Development Commission. Great stuff.
Now, on the 15th of February 2022, the Zambia Law Development Commission handed over a project report and proposed draft penal code and criminal procedure code bills to the Minister of Justice with a number of recommendations, including a repeal on the offense of bigamy, which has brought so much social media debate. Let's pick your thoughts on that. You are a researcher. How did you come up with these recommendations?
Okay, so going by the statutory mandate or the enabling legislation, which is the Zambia Law Development Commission Act, the Commission can initiate a law review project after receiving instructions from the Minister of Justice. We can also initiate a research into matters of the law if we have instructions from other line ministries, and we can also embark on a research project after receiving recommendations from members of the public or any other organization, including civil society organizations. So, particularly for this particular project which we are talking about, the Zambia Law Development Commission in 2011 received instructions from the then Minister of Justice, Honorable George Kunda, State Council, and may he so rest in peace, where the minister called on the Zambia Law Development Commission to actually look into the review of the Penal Code Act, which is Chapter 87 of the Laws of Zambia, and the Criminal Procedure Code Act, which is Chapter 88 of the Laws of Zambia. And the rationale behind that recommendation or instruction from the minister was that, look, as a country, we have a Penal Code and the Criminal Procedure Code, which were enacted way before the country attained its independence. These are two pieces of legislation which were enacted in 1931 and 1933, respectively. And the minister said they may not be speaking to the social and political values of the Zambian people. we may need to review so that we update our penal laws and we update our penal procedures. And the minister also observed that there was a public outcry where people said, we have duplicity of laws. We have one offense in one piece of legislation and the same offense being found in another piece of legislation. And in certain areas, some of the offenses even had conflicting penalties. So the minister said, can we clean our statute books? Can we review the law so that we avoid duplicity, so that we have a comprehensive penal legislation which provides for penal content and also for clear procedures. And that's how this particular law review process was initiated by the Zambia Law Development Commission. It was a recommendation from the Minister of Justice.
What were the objectives for this review?
So the objectives, as I've indicated, the general objective was to conduct a comprehensive review of our penal laws, which is the Penal Code Act and the Criminal Procedure Code Act. And this was being done to address duplicity, that is, to address the situations where you have different, a same offense being in different statutes.
Are you able to cite one of those offenses that appear on both?
There are several such offenses.
Cite one.
Actually, it can even be a topic on its own for the whole program. Okay, quickly, let me give you some of the offenses which come with duplicity. You mentioned bigamy.
Yes.
You know that bigamy is an offense related to marriage. This offense is provided for under the Marriage Act, and specifically, it is in Section 38 of the Marriage Act. The Marriage Act is very clear. It says, if you are married under customary law, then you go ahead to contract another marriage under statute, you commit an offense. That is, it's an offense if the person you are now marrying under statute is not the person you are married to. Meaning you have an initial marriage under customary law, then you are going through a civil marriage or a statutory marriage under the Marriage Act. That is in section 38 of the Marriage Act. Then it also, the same section says, if you are married under statute, then you go ahead to marry under customary law, or you go through another marriage ceremony. In short, going through another marriage ceremony when your first marriage still subsists, it's a criminal offense under the Marriage Act. And the penalty for that is 5 years. Then you have the same offense in Section 166 of the criminal procedure, of the penal code, which is also criminalizing bigamy. Going through another marriage ceremony while the first marriage
still in existence.
Yes. So you find two pieces of legislation providing for the same offense, and that is what we are calling duplicity of offenses. And the technical committee which was appointed by Cabinet in this particular regard was very categorical. The instructions from the Minister of Justice was also very clear. Let's address duplicity. We should not be having same offenses in different statutes. That creates the conflict of laws. So what the technical committee recommended, and I can even speak to the report itself, which has been produced by the Zambia Law Development Commission and the technical committee. On page 38 of the report, the commission gives or highlights the submission from the stakeholder. It is a finding of fact where the commission says some stakeholders submitted that the offense of bigamy be repealed from the penal code. On section 44 of the same report, remember it's a very big report, it's more than 200 pages.
Yes.
Exactly.
On page 44 of the same report.
Is that the report that you have there?
This is the summarized version of the report.
Okay.
Yes. So, and that report can be accessed on our website, both the summarized version and the original version. So on page 44 of the report, the technical committee makes a recommendation that bigamy be repealed from the Penal Code. And that decision is based on its observation contained in the same report on page 35, where the technical committee has observed that this offense, the offense of bigamy, is found both under the Marriage Act and under the Penal Code. This is a duplicity. That's what the report says. It is a matter of duplicity, and the duplicity of offenses should be avoided. So the recommendation on page 44 of the report is based on that observation. And the repeal that has been recommended is the repeal from the Penal Code. And I think the members of the public should get me right. The repeal that the technical committee has recommended is repealing the offense of bigamy from the Penal Code Act and not the Marriage Act. Meaning, even though we are repealing this offense under the Penal Code Act, it still remains an offense in Zambia under the Criminal Procedure Code, under the Marriage Act.
The Marriage Act.
The only thing that the technical committee and the commission are advising government to avoid is duplicity of laws, having the same offense in the two different statutes. The other examples that I can give, you have issues to do with the trafficking in persons. We have the Anti-Human Trafficking Act that prohibits trafficking in persons and provides for the offense for a penalty of the penalties relating to trafficking start from 15 to 35 years, and under certain circumstances you can even be given life imprisonment. Then you have the same offense under the Penal Code Act, where similar actions relating to human trafficking, like selling body parts, selling someone as a slave, or buying someone as a slave, all those issues are matters of human trafficking. But under the Penal Code, the sentence is 7 years. What explanation can you give? Because it's a grave offense to start with. Society has recognized that.
Yes.
And under the Specialized Act dealing with human trafficking, the minimum penalty is 15 years. You can be sentenced to 35 years, in certain circumstances to life imprisonment. Then you have the same offense under the Penal Code, which is saying the penalty is 7 years. That creates conflicts of laws.
Exactly.
So we want to provide certainty. We are recommending that our laws should be certain. When you are arrested, people should be able to tell, to say this person with this offense, he will be charged under this statute, and if he or she is convicted, this is what will be the penalty.
Is it the same with the death penalty? Because those critics, it's one of the things they pointed out to say, it means based on your recommendation, it means that you are going to remove, you are advocating for the removal of the death penalty. Does it mean that the death penalty will no longer be recognized in Zambia? Are you able to provide clarity on that as well?
Thank you so much. The only advice I can give to the members of the public is that before you comment, read the report. The report is very clear. And it indicates that some members of the public submitted to have the death penalty abolished, while others were in support. Now, if you look at Article 12 of the Constitution, it provides for the protection of the right to life. And I think let me handle that at the same time with the issue of abortion, which is also trending. Because people are also saying...
I think everything about this report is trending. Everything is trending.
Yes. Yeah, because, so there are people who are alleging that the Zambia Road Development Commission has recommended that the death penalty be abolished. Or the Zambia Road Development Commission has recommended that the abortion be abolished in Zambia. Please, there is no such a recommendation from the Commission and the Technical Committee in the report. People should be able to distinguish Zambia Law Development Commission and Technical Committee's recommendations from submissions from stakeholders. So what the report has done is, it has specific recommendations that are coming from the Commission, and as a matter of transparency and accountability to the people and organizations who were involved throughout the process, we have annexed to the report their submissions. So if you are not careful in reading the report, you will land on a page which is in the annex part of the report. The part which is just meant for us to remain transparent to the Zambian people who expect us to reflect their views. And that when we reject their views, we justify or give reasons as to why we have not taken on board their submission. So with regards to the death penalty, there is a bigger debate out there on what the position should be. And the technical committee advised to say, can we leave it to the general public to decide on their own? And this is a matter which also sits in the Constitution under Article 12, which provides for the right to life. And if that be the case, you can only do away with the death penalty, or you can retain it first by dealing with what is sitting under Article 12 of the Constitution. The review process was about reviewing the Penal Code and the Criminal Procedure Code Act, not the Constitution. Okay. And remember, the death penalty first comes from the Constitution itself. Matters of abortion, again, Article 12, sub-Article 2 of the same Constitution provides for the protection of the right to life of an unborn child. So the technical committee, despite the submissions that came from certain from members of the public and also from some civil society organizations, maintained that we cannot repeal the offense of abortion because the right to life of the child is protected under Article 12.2 of the Constitution. We cannot do away with the offense of, with the penalty with the death penalty because it has its provision under Article 12 of the Constitution. So that is the position on the two issues.
Okay, you are watching the Camnet Breakfast, and in studio and in conversation we have a research coordinator from the Zambia Law Development Commission, Mr. Mwiva. I don't know why I keep failing to mention your name, Mr. Mwiva Mwenda. And just now we take a short breather as we get to be joined by another person from the Zambia Law Development Commission just to join in the conversation so that we ambush them nicely as they are told. Remember, you two out there can call in and ask those pertinent questions with regards to repealing this penal code, among other procedure code bills that have been released by this commission. Good morning.
Camnet TV is becoming big and better. You can now watch Camnet TV wherever you are around the world, simply by downloading the Camnet TV app. With Camnet TV app, you only use less bundles. Camnet TV, not just another channel.
Hello, I'm Deborah Lukalu, all the way from South Africa. You are watching Camnet channel, not just another channel. God bless you. Stay tuned.
Apples and bananas.
All right, welcome back. You're still watching the Camnet Breakfast, and on set we've been joined by Lina Jerry from the Zambia Law Development Commission, joining her colleague on set. She is a senior research officer. As you may be aware, we are discussing a very important conversation that's been going round and taking Zambians to storm, discussing various issues that maybe we are not even understanding, Patrick.
Yeah, but I think with the explanation that has been provided, clarity is getting there. Clarity is getting there.
Yes. Lina, welcome to this set. I'm not calling it an interview. I want to call it a conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Yeah, because we also want to find out, I think our comrade there has provided a lot of insight regarding some of the issues, but were stakeholders consulted in this process that has brought out this debate, where stakeholders engaged?
Thank you so much for that question. So in every law review process that we carry out, stakeholder consultation is a key component. So similarly, during the review of the Penal Code Act and the Criminal Procedure Code Act, we held stakeholder consultations in Lusaka, in the Copper Belt Province, in Central Province, and in the Southern Province. So what the goal of these meetings were to present to stakeholders some of the problematic areas that we had identified in the two pieces of legislation, and also to learn from them that in their interaction with the criminal justice system and with these two pieces of legislation, what are some of the issues that they have come across, and how can we as a Law Development Commission assist them in that regard. Other than the physical meetings, we also held virtual consultative meetings. So for the virtual consultative meetings, we targeted certain specific actors in the criminal justice system. So these included the Law Association of Zambia, the judiciary, and civil society organizations. We also targeted law schools at different public and private universities. And other than the meetings, we carried out a public call for submissions. We did that through our website and also through our Facebook page. And we were able to receive submissions from the general public, but also, surprisingly, also from international and regional bodies. So we did receive a lot of submissions from the public.
But what is the summary of the recommendations that you are making in this report as the Commission?
Okay, so the first one regarding the Penal Code Act, as our research coordinator mentioned, so one of the key issues that were identified was that there are different pieces of legislation that contain criminal penalties. And for that reason, we found that there was a lot of duplicity and inconsistency with regards to sentencing. And so our first and biggest recommendation is to consolidate all penal provisions in the Penal Code Act and to consolidate all criminal procedure in the Criminal Procedure Code Act. So a consequence of that proposal is that we would then amend those different pieces of legislation to repeal those provisions that are moving into the Penal Code Act. The second recommendation is to do away with some derogatory language. Like our coordinator mentioned, these are very, very old acts. They were enacted in 1931 and 1933. And so you'll find words referring to persons with mental disabilities like idiot and imbecile, which is in conflict with international human rights law, and also our local legislation like the Mental Health Act. So our next recommendation is to do away with those derogatory terms and use more acceptable language. The next recommendation was with regards to minimum mandatory sentences. You will note that there are a number of offences in the Penal Code Act that have that sort of suggests a minimum penalty that the court can impose against a person who has been convicted for a criminal offence. And the international human rights law, which we are signatory to, states that this amounts to arbitrary detention. That a person, a sentence that is being imposed on a person should be determined based on the facts of that case. And also some stakeholders stated that minimum mandatory sentences result in, have contributed to overcrowding in prison facilities. So our other recommendation is to do away with minimum mandatory sentences. But before we do away with those minimum mandatory sentences, there's need for us to introduce sentencing guidelines so that the court don't have complete discretion. So this will help to ensure that sentencing is consistent and is the sentence is sort of reasonable with regards to the offense that a person has committed. And then with regards to petty offenses, you'll note that we have a few offenses in the Penal Code Act that can be considered to be petty. For instance, a lot of people don't know that begging is actually a criminal offense, and exposing wounds with the intention to beg.
Wow.
Yes, it is. So these are some of the offenses that are rarely enforced, but they are actually there. Even being suspected to be a thief and you have no visible means of income is actually a criminal offense. So under the principles for the decriminalization of petty offenses, it's a mouthful, sorry.
Yes.
The recommendation is that there's need for African countries specifically, to decriminalize some of those offenses because they target poor people, as you can imagine. And so the recommendation of the Zambia Law Development Commission and the Technical Committee is that we should remove these petty offenses from the statute book. But before we do that, there's need for us to develop our social service system to deal with those issues so that we are still able to maintain law and order in the country. But our ultimate goal is to do away with petty offenses from the Penal Code Act. I'll just go to the Criminal Procedure Code Act because there are quite a number of
them. The other one of interest is defamation law.
Yes, exactly. I wanted to go there.
The Zambia Law Development Commission in that regard has recommended that defamation laws should be repealed. We are talking about laws such as defamation of the president,
yes,
and also defamation of foreign princes and the like. We are saying these have a negative impact on the enjoyment of the fundamental rights and freedoms, such as freedom of expression. The purview within which the freedom of expression should be enjoyed is clearly spelled out under the Constitution. That is in Article 19 of the Constitution. And the limitations on that enjoyment is equally contained in the
defamation of the princess.
And in this particular case, we are saying, as Zambia Law Development Commission and the Technical Committee, we are saying stakeholders have overwhelmingly submitted that can we have defamation laws repealed from our statute books. And the Technical Committee endorsed that recommendation, and we are making it as a recommendation. But let me put a rider to that. Our recommendations are not final. There are other internal legislative processes that have to be allowed to take place. There are internal legislative processes within Ministry of Justice and also the Cabinet before what we have recommended can be tabled in Parliament for consideration by our lawmakers. Remember, the legislative function of our country is vested in the legislature. What we are coming up with as a commission, working together with the Technical Committee, are recommendations. We don't make the law, but we recommend the laws that should be put in place. That's the distinction that people should make. Even when they look at our reports, even when they look at our draft bills for those with whom it is shared on the need-to-know basis, they should know that those draft bills, those project reports, are recommendations. They are not final. Cabinet and Parliament will still have time to look through them and be able to perform their functions as prescribed.
Mr. Musonda, but have you taken into account the concerns that removing that law would also lead to a situation where people would be insulting the head of state with impunity, as witnessed in the recent past? And how is the justification for that one?
The report on that one is very categorical. It says we frown upon insult and defamation of any kind. But containing making our penal laws to actually reflect defamation laws as a bigger negative effect on society than removing them. Remember, it doesn't mean there will be no action that can be taken. If you look at the penal code, it has more than 300 offenses. And some of them, even if we remove defamation, all we are removing is defamation of the president and defamation of foreign princes or any.
Do you have a princess? Is it necessary?
So you can see our cake, our penal code is. Because it was what? It was enacted in 1931. By then, this country was being referred to as Northern Rhodesia. And by then it was okay to have such an offense because we were under the British rule. The British then are the prince and the princess and the like. So at that time it was okay. But time has moved. Should we still have laws that will reflect a colonial legacy? The answer is no. This is time for us to decide what should be our penal laws on our own. So we are maintaining progressive provisions in the penal code as they are, but we are recommending amendment or repeal of certain offenses from the penal code.
I don't know how proactive the media or media bodies were in these submissions, but some of the challenges as the media will also face include the aspect of especially when you talked about petty offenses. If you just remove your camera in the courts or your phone rings, you are likely to be charged with contempt, depending on the discretion of the magistrate or the judge. So such provisions, did you consider that? Then other countries have also advanced in terms of legal matters where they put these cases on camera, like high-profile cases. We have them on camera, but for us, we are still being prevented from doing the same.
For petty offenses, the explanation that the senior research officer gave, in my opinion, was very good. We do not need to criminalize poverty. So offenses such as begging, someone is on the streets begging because he or she has no means. But again, we don't want to create chaos such that you cannot smoothly conduct your business. You cannot go on doing your daily business in peace. Because immediately you tell everyone to say, no more petty offenses. How many are going to be on the streets to beg or to expose their wounds so that you feel pity for them and give them something?
And we see that situation on a daily basis. So that also shows our weakness in terms of law enforcement.
Yes, but what the technical committee has recommended is that before we decriminalize petty offenses such as gathering arms, can we first strengthen our social protection system so that people have the means not to go on the road? And if a person goes on the road, you will be saying, why are you on the road? Because we have empowered you. So that is the approach that government has taken. Other petty offenses, we may talk about issues to do with hide-on disorderly, commonly known as shishita in our communities. That is also another petty offense, which in 1931, or which prior to our independence, was put in place to restrict the movement of natives so that they don't revolt against the colonial rule. So do we still want to restrict our people from moving so that they don't revolt? Because the rationale then was to restrict their movements for them not to revolt.
Interesting.
All right, so we are talking about now, is it 57? Yes. 57 years or more from the time we gained our independence, but we are still restricting our movements for our people. But what the technical committee again has advised is that we need to strengthen different systems so that people don't get advantage of the decriminalization of certain offenses for them to now engage in other grave crimes.
All right, so Mr. Miwa, now that the report has been presented to the Ministry of Justice, could this be the end of your gathering information from various stakeholders, or can they still come forth and recommend on this same report to say, no, this way wasn't supposed to be done this?
And what is the way forward after the report has been submitted?
Okay, so for us as a law reform institution, our daily business is receiving concerns on matters of the law. Yes, we have submitted our report to the Minister of Justice. When you come to us, we are not going to say, oh, Minister of Justice, we are retrieving the report, we have new submissions. We are not going to do that. But again, we are not going to reject your submission, because we have another opportunity that is coming. When the recommendations are taken to Parliament, there will be a select committee that will be sitting to consider the recommendations. And the Zambia Law Development Commission will be one of the witnesses who will be called before the National Assembly to speak to some of the recommendations, or to speak to the contents of the bills. And we can use that as an opportunity. That's why I said we cannot throw away what you give us. We can still keep. But we'll only use them at the time when we'll be called by the National Assembly to appear before a select committee that will be scrutinizing the bill to repeal the Penal Code and to repeal the Criminal Procedure Code. So not all is lost. Even other civil society organizations will also be called as witnesses to appear before the select committee. So the way forward is we allow the internal legislative processes to happen within government, and at this stage, it's within Ministry of Justice and Cabinet. And if Cabinet thinks the bill is fit to be tabled before Parliament, the Minister of Justice will introduce it on the floor of the House. A select committee will be put in place to scrutinize the bill, and we will still have an opportunity as members of the public to speak to the bill and whether or not we are supporting the content or not.
I'm tempted to ask if this is the first time you're making such recommendations, looking at how long it has taken. You've clearly mentioned 57 years. We've been having these so-called bad laws, you know, infringing on people's rights somehow. Is this the first time you're recommending this?
Okay, so what has happened is, over time, there have been various amendments that have been effected to the Penal Code and to the Criminal Procedure Code, but they were not comprehensive in nature.
This one is comprehensive.
Now, this one is a comprehensive review, which has looked or which has considered each and every provision in the Penal Code and the Criminal Procedure Code. That's why today we are talking about a report that has been submitted containing more than 200 pages. But it has specific findings and specific recommendations. So when it comes to the findings, we reflect what we found on the ground. What people submitted, or what people supported, or what they did not support. What is happening in other countries as a matter of best practice. Or what our international commitments are. You remember, as a country, we have committed to a number of international human rights instruments, which instruments are not self-executing in nature, but they require us to actually do something in order to make them a reality. So for those which we have committed ourselves to, we use this as an opportunity to incorporate them in the law as a way of domesticating some of the provisions at international law.
Okay, so bigamy, defamation of the president, and abortion are some of the three things that have come out so prominent in this report. But clearly, like you have mentioned, it's a big report, it's huge, and it takes people to actually read and understand. Linda, where do people get this report? Just understand it and realize that it's not only the three things that
and the way people are put in the context.
Yes.
Can you clear their misconception? Because there is a perception that we are going to divert as a country in terms of the moral fiber, because we are going to allow people to marry multiple partners, we are going to see rampant abortions, we are going to see the removal of the death penalty. But are people speaking out of understanding or ignorance based on your analysis as the people behind this document?
Well, what I would say, as you've mentioned, it's quite a huge report. It's over 200 pages. But I'd really advise the public to read the report for themselves. So the report is downloadable from our website. That's ZambiaLawDevelopmentCommission.org. So you will find it under our media tab. So if you look at the report, I'll just advise the public to pay particular attention to the table of contents. So the table of contents will guide you to some of the key areas of the report, and I'll just point the public to read what our findings of the desk review were, and also the specific findings and recommendations of the Commission. And then if the public would like to know what came from the stakeholders, specifically from the stakeholders, that can be found in the annex of our report.
Okay, and just in a quick way also to speak to some of the other recommendations, just a snapshot of what else is contained under our report. Ms. Jerry talked about certain things from the Penal Code. We are also proposing that for the age of criminal responsibility, the minimum age of criminal responsibility for children, let it be moved from 8 years to 14 years. Meaning, a child should only be held criminally responsible for something that child has done if that child is 14 years and above. Then we are also proposing to, in terms of trial in the subordinate court, under the Criminal Procedure Code, we are proposing that discovery be introduced in the subordinate court. Discovery, for people who may not have a good understanding of it, is at the moment when you are taken to the subordinate court, the only thing you will know is the offense you are charged with. You don't know the witness and their statements that they are coming to give. And this is called trial by ambush. But meanwhile, under Article 18 of our Constitution, the Constitution is very clear. Any person who is charged with a criminal offense should be given adequate time to prepare for his defense. So if you are taking me to court without knowing who has accused me, without knowing what they are coming to say, and other related issues, I only get to know that, oh, so Ms. Rina Jere is the complainant in this case when I'm in court. Or Ms. Rina Jere told the police this when I'm in court. We are recommending that even an accused person has rights that must be protected, as informed by our own Constitution. So we introduce discovery in the subordinate court, so that before an accused person appears before the court, he knows what statements have been given to the police. He knows what will be produced in court as evidence, because that will enable him to prepare his defense adequately. Remember, human rights are for both the accused person and the victim. So we can not only strengthen the system with regards to protecting the victim. They all have rights, and we are saying we should do away with trial by ambush.
The interesting part on what you are mentioning, I think, like you were saying, Sharon, we need to have another conversation.
We need to have another conversation.
Because I have a follow-up for you. If you ask me, please. Some people are dangerous. Like the suspect is dangerous, and the moment you unveil as a witness, they go to that witness and threaten them. And we've seen that even in the current situation where someone comes to say, oh no, I'm withdrawing, I'm no longer aggrieved with this person, because they were threatened indirectly. So probably to avoid that, it is no wonder some things are restricted, because some people are powerful, yes, and some people are on the vulnerable side.
But law enforcement officers will tell you they have their own measures to keep such. If even the courts, they have measures to keep that.
But the current systems are not strong.
For example, if there is evidence that I am likely to tamper with the witnesses, the court won't grant me bail. I will remain inside the police cell or a remand prison. So there are measures from law enforcement and also from...
We have drug cartels that run affairs while in prison.
But what we are saying is...
So it's quite a huge subject, if you ask me.
But what we are saying in this case is, let the accused person be given adequate time and facilities to prepare for his defense. Because you ambush me, I don't know what to say, I end up being convicted, when actually I may be an innocent person.
Exactly.
So fair trial requires that the accused person be given adequate time. And that's why we are recommending discovery in in the subordinate court. The other recommendation that the Commission and the Technical Committee have made is to enhance the sentencing jurisdiction of our magistrates. Currently, the maximum number of years a magistrate can sentence, and that is a chief resident magistrate and the principal resident magistrate, is 9 years.
Yes.
But they are trying offences whose sentences, if one is found guilty, may be 15 years and above. For example, defilement. So, as we are talking today, a magistrate can only try a case of defilement, but has no power to give the sentence. Meaning, if I am convicted for defilement, the magistrate has to commit the case to the High Court for the High Court judge to pass the sentence. The High Court already is overburdened. The caseload is just something else. So we are just piling cases on cases. And we are saying, with the level of training our judicial officers have gained over time, they are capable to sentence, to give enhanced sentences. And in this report, we are recommending that at least a magistrate should be given at least jurisdiction to pass even a sentence of 25 years.
Interesting outcomes there. We're just going to
wind up
to give us our winding remarks, because we can go on and on. This is an interesting conversation.
Okay, thank you so much. I think what we are saying as a commission is we are open to public scrutiny, and all our processes are transparent. And we remain committed to remain open to the Zambian people. Feel free to approach the Commission. We are at plot number 26F, that is along Chita Road in Kabronga, just opposite the South African High Commission. Feel free to bring in your written submission on any law review process, or you can visit our website, which is www.zambialawdevelopment.org. We are also on Facebook. The Facebook name is Zambia Law Development Commission. You can find us there. We are on Twitter. Our hashtag is @ZambiaLaw_development. You can interact with us. You can also write a letter through the post. It will still be able to reach us. Okay. But just to advise the Zambian people with regard to the review of the Penal Code and the Criminal Procedure Code Act, do not allow yourselves to be misled by people who have not read the report. The report is in public domain. The report is on our website. Feel free, even before you comment, feel free to download the report and be able to contribute to this discourse in an informed manner. We are not curtailing any debate. We are not curtailing any comment from the members of the public. They are free. It's their commission. They are free. It's their law. But let them contribute to this debate from an informed position. And they can only do that by reading the report.
Linda?
Well, just to thank you for having us here today, and also just to encourage the public to continue the debates on the review of the Penal Code Act and the Criminal Procedure Code Act. It's very interesting for us as researchers also to listen to what's coming out from the public, some of the public discussions, and also some of the input that we are receiving is going to guide us in future law reform processes. Okay. So thank you.
Patrick?
Interesting. Well, on my part, I think I'm overwhelmed with information on the review.
I'm very excited actually to have been hosting these guys here from the Zambia Law Development Agency, trying to clarify on some of the issues. And one of the things that has really come out so prominent, Patrick, is that they are not actually saying you can go ahead and marry as many women as you want without facing the law, you know, because this is something that people are excited about. And before you came on set, by the way, Patrick was saying, if at all men will not allow women to marry two men, then stop the conversation. That's what he was saying.
I can tell Patrick that marrying more women or women marrying more men understand it.
That is still stands. That they are actually trying to remove the duplication of the law from this to this to this and just have one, because equally it's very difficult to persecute somebody because they'll use this law to say no, me, you can do this, this, and
according to the penal code you are not supposed to go me up to 15 years, but 7 years.
7 years.
So I can argue with that. You get the sense. So, but if we have one legislation on the same subject, it is important that we just address that. It is the same process that is being undertaken under the business review.
Yes.
They also do the same thing with laws that are in the business sector, and they are in conflict. Like there's a duplication. It is the same with these important laws that we're talking about. Just familiarize yourselves with this important review so that you can speak on an informed perspective, just like Sharon and I.
Yes, indeed. So you can still follow this conversation. The show is done, but you can also watch the show and contribute to the responses that they've been giving. We will still follow up and as well follow them to their office. Download the report and read so that you can comment on an informed perspective without giving or maybe alarming the nation on social media. Otherwise, that's where we leave it. We had in studio Linda Jerry, a senior research officer from the Zambia Law Development Commission, and her colleague Mwiva Mwenda, who is a research coordinator. Good morning.